Hi guys, this is our first video on respiration. This is chapter 22. So all body processes directly or indirectly require adenosine triphosphate or ATP. Most ATP synthesis requires oxygen and then will produce carbon dioxide. And this drives the need to take in oxygen and eliminate carbon dioxide from the body. So the respiratory system aids in this gas exchange. The respiratory system consists of a system of tubes that delivers air to the lungs, where oxygen can diffuse into the blood and carbon dioxide can diffuse out. As we know from our previous lectures, the respiratory and cardiovascular systems are pretty intimately linked so that they can deliver oxygen to the tissues and remove carbon dioxide. Together, they're known as the cardiopulmonary system. This means that disorders of the lungs can directly affect the heart and vice versa, if you remember from previous lectures on the cardiovascular system. The respiratory system also works with the urinary system to regulate the body's acid-base balance. So now we're going to talk about the anatomy of the respiratory system itself. So respiration is a term used to refer to the actual ventilation of the lungs, which is also known as breathing. In other contexts, you could talk about cellular respiration, but that would refer to the cellular metabolism. Here, respiration is going to refer to the ventilation of the lungs. So functions of breathing include gas exchange, where oxygen and carbon dioxide are exchanged between the blood and air, communication with speech and other vocalization, olfaction, which is the sense of smell, acid-base balance, which influences the pH of body fluids that can be influenced by eliminating carbon dioxide, can also help with blood pressure regulation by helping in the synthesis of angiotensin II, as well as helping with blood and lymph flow. So breathing creates pressure gradients between the thorax and the abdomen that promote the flow of lymph and blood. If you remember, this is also called the thoracic pump. It also aids with blood filtration because the lungs can filter out small clots, or if you have big clots, then that's pretty bad trouble, but it can filter small clots. And it can also help with expulsion of abdominal contents such as urine, feces, and children. So the principal organs of the respiratory system are the nose, which you should be pretty familiar with, the larynx, the pharynx, the larynx, the trachea, the bronchi, and the lungs. Incoming air stops in the alveoli of the lungs, which are millions of thin-walled microscopic air sacs where the actual gas exchange with the bloodstream occur. So the conducting zone of the respiratory system are the passages that serve only for airflow, and there's no actual gas exchange. So this would be the nostrils through the major bronchioles. So basically anything up until where the air is delivered to the capillary systems. The respiratory zone of the respiratory system is where the actual gas exchange happens. And this is made up of the alveoli as well as other gas exchange regions within the respiratory system. The respiratory system can also be divided into upper and lower tracts. So the upper tract is the nose through the larynx, and this is in the head and the neck. And the lower respiratory tract are the organs of the thorax, and this is the trachea through the lungs. So here we see the upper and lower respiratory systems, with the upper being the nose through the larynx, and the trachea being starting the lower respiratory system. So the nose is an organ you should be pretty familiar with because you see it every day, hopefully. So the functions of the nose are to warm, cleanse, and humidify inhaled air, to detect odors, and to serve as a resonating chamber that amplifies your voice. Think about when you have a cold and how your voice is impacted when you're stuffed up. So the nose itself extends from the nostrils, which are called nares, to the posterior nasal apertures, or holes, which are called the choanae, which are the posterior openings. The facial part, which is what you see, is shaped by bone and hyaline cartilage, with the superior half being shaped by the nasal bones and the maxillae, and the inferior half being shaped by lateral and alar cartilage. Here's a picture of your nose. You can see the outside area. Not much to say here. So the nasal fossa are the right and left halves of the nasal cavity, with the nasal septum dividing that nasal cavity. The nasal septum itself is composed of bone and hyaline cartilage, with the vomer forming the inferior part and the ethmoids forming the superior part. The septal cartilage also forms the anterior part. The roof and floor of the nasal cavity are formed by ethmoid and sphenoid bones on the roof and the hard palate forming the floor. This separates the nasal cavity from the oral cavity, allowing you to breathe while you're chewing food. Sinuses occur within that area, and you have paranasal sinuses, which are next to the nose, and the nasolacrimal duct, which goes from the nose to the tear ducts, and they drain into that nasal cavity. The vestibule is the beginning of the nasal cavity, which is a small dilated chamber just inside the nostrils, and this is lined with stratified squamous epithelium. This has vibrissae, which are stiff guard hairs that block insects and debris from entering your nose. The chamber behind the vestibule is occupied by 3 different folds of tissue, which are called the nasal conchae. They are superior, middle, and inferior nasal conchae. These project from the lateral walls and go towards the septum. The narrowness of these and the turbulence of airflow ensures that most air is able to come in contact with mucous membranes. This allows the nose to clean, warm, and moisten the air because you're cleaning it by trapping molecules in the mucus, warming it with body temperature, and moistening it using the moisture within that air. Olfactory epithelium is used to detect odors, and this covers a small area of the roof of the nasal fossa and the adjacent parts of the septum and superior concha. There are immobile cilia, which are little hairs on the sensory cells, and these bind the odorant molecules so that you can perceive smell. The respiratory epithelium lines the rest of the nasal cavity except for the vestibule, and this is ciliated pseudostratified columnar epithelium with goblet cells. The cilia are motile, which allows them to propel mucus that's created by the goblet cells and push the mucus posteriorly towards the pharynx, where it's then swallowed into the digestive tract. Within the concha are erectile tissues made up because of extensive venous plexus, which is just a grouping of veins. So every 30 to 60 minutes, tissue on one side of your nose will swell, and this restricts airflow through that fossa so that most air is going to be directed through the other nostril. And this allows the time that's restricted, allows that restricted side to recover from drying out so that you don't have your nose dried out, because then it can't trap things in mucus or warm or moisten the air. So here we see the anatomy of the upper respiratory tract with the superior, middle, and inferior nasal conchae, the vestibule with your guard hairs, which are those pleasant nose hairs. Here you have your nares, which is your nostril. This extends down into the pharynx. Here we see not as pretty, but it's a dissected cadaver, and you can see these same structures. So next we'll be talking about what's beyond the nose. So here we have all the different bones of the nose area. So now we'll be talking about the pharynx, which is divided into 3 different parts: the nasopharynx, the oropharynx, and the laryngopharynx. The pharynx, which is the throat, is the muscular funnel that extends about 5 inches from the choanae to the larynx. So again, there are 3 regions of the pharynx. The first is the nasopharynx, which is posterior to the nasal apertures above the soft palate. It receives auditory tubes, which are the tubes that come from your ears, and contains the pharyngeal tonsil. The 90-degree downward turn traps large particles there. The oropharynx is the space between the soft palate and the epiglottis and contains the palatine tonsils. The laryngopharynx is the epiglottis to the cricoid cartilage, where the esophagus will then begin. The nasopharynx only passes air and is lined by pseudostratified columnar epithelial tissue. The oropharynx and the laryngopharynx pass air as well as food and drink and are lined by stratified squamous epithelial tissue. The muscles of the pharynx also assist in swallowing and speech. So moving on, the larynx, which is also known as the voice box, is a cartilaginous chamber that's about 4 inches long. The primary function of the larynx is to keep food and drink out of the airway. In several different animals, it's evolved the additional role of phonation, which is the production of sound. So this is the primary organ responsible for birdsong. So within the larynx is the epiglottis, which is the flap of tissue that guards the superior opening of the larynx. So that during swallowing, extrinsic muscles of the larynx pull the larynx upward, the tongue pushes the epiglottis down to meet it, and this then closes the airway and directs food into the esophagus rather than the trachea. The vestibular folds of the larynx play a great role in keeping food and drink out of the airway as well, because this is pretty important since getting drinks or water in the airway in the trachea can lead to drowning. So the walls of the larynx are very muscular. There are deep intrinsic muscles that operate the vocal cords, and there are superior extrinsic muscles that connect the larynx to the hyoid bone, which elevates the larynx during swallowing. These are called the infrahyoid group. It's worth noting that the hyoid bone is the smallest bone within the body. You guys should have learned that in A&P 1. In the larynx, adult male vocal cords, when compared to female vocal cords, are usually longer and thicker and vibrate more slowly, and this produces a lower pitch sound. So loudness is determined by the force of air that passes between the vocal cords. The vocal cords can produce sounds that are formed into words by actions of the pharynx, the oral cavity, the tongue, and the lips. So you can see that the larynx also functions with respiration, but also plays a very key role in talking or making speech. So here we have the anatomy of the larynx, where you can see the hyoid bone, as well as all the cartilaginous structures. And we can see an endoscopic view going down in there. You can see the epiglottis, as well as the vestibular folds, the vocal cords, and the trachea itself. Moving on, so you can also see the action of how muscles can impact the vocal cords, allowing for speech. So moving on, the trachea, which is also known as the windpipe, is a rigid tube that's about 12 centimeters long and 2.5 centimeters in diameter. It's located anteriorly to the esophagus and is shaped by cartilage rings made up of hyaline cartilage that reinforce the trachea and prevent any sort of collapse during inhalation. The opening in the rings face posteriorly towards the esophagus. The trachealis muscle spans the opening in the rings and allows for room for the esophagus to expand as food passes by. It also contracts or relaxes to adjust airflow. The inner lining of the trachea is ciliated pseudostratified columnar epithelial tissue. And this is composed mostly of mucus-secreting cells, ciliated, or those hairs, and stem cells. The mucociliary escalator is a mechanism for debris removal. So mucus will trap inhaled particles, and the upward beating of cilia will drive mucus towards the pharynx, where it can then be swallowed. The middle tracheal layer is connective tissue below the tracheal epithelium. This contains lymphatic nodes, mucus and serous glands, and the actual tracheal cartilages. The adventitia is the outermost layer of the trachea, and this is made up of fibrous connective tissue that blends into the adventitia of other organs within the mediastinum. It also has left and right main bronchi, which are forks at the level of the sternal angle. These also form carina, which are internal medial ridges in the lowermost tracheal cartilage, and this directs the airflow to the right and the left. So here we see the anatomy of the lower respiratory tract. We'll stop there and we'll talk about where it goes from there.